Well, hello and welcome to another episode of The Unlicensed Counselor. My name is Steve Moak. I am the Unlicensed Counselor. So grateful to be here as always on this beautiful, sunny, kind of crisp air day here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And if you know Scottsdale at all, you know we've got the Waste Management, aka Phoenix Open, aka People's Open coming up here in Scottsdale, Arizona. I think it's next week or so. This town, let me tell you, like we do events pretty darn well out here, but this is a big one. And, you know, I won't go quick story time with Uncle Steve over here, but man, back in the partying days, this is the week that you'd kind of gear up and go big on. I distinctly remember people coming into town, partying the whole week of the Open, and then having to check in like that Sunday night, Monday morning to a treatment center because people would go so crazy. So, yeah, if you're out there and you're hearing this and you're going to be going to the Open, take it easy on yourself, right? You know, you don't have to stay all day. You don't have to use every single drink on the unlimited drink ticket every single time. So, but honestly, it's such a fun event. And if you can do it without the partying, which I do now, and now they've got concerts, and there's so many fun things to do. There are ways, believe it or not, to go out there and enjoy yourself without getting blackout, crazy, drunk, and all that stuff. But I digress. Honestly, like this is the time of year that kind of kicks off spring for me in Scottsdale. I know you're like, well, it's January, not even February yet. This is kind of when I think spring starts for us because now it just goes into perfect. We roll into spring training, right, in February, March, and then we just hit that beautiful time of year out here. But as always, you didn't tune into the Unlicensed Counselor to hear how great Scottsdale is or a weather report of what we got going on here. You're here to talk about kind of some counseling fundamentals, some basics. And today I want to talk about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, as many and most of these topics are, how to not take things so personally, right? You know, we were just talking pre-show right now. There's actually a book called The Four Agreements. If you haven't read it, this is actually one of the four agreements as well. It's a quick and easy read. I highly encourage you to do it. It's one of the things when I worked at a treatment center here that I read as a client, and then when I went back to work at the same treatment center, I actually helped lead a facilitation discussion around the four agreements as well and how to not take things so personally. Sounds a lot easier than it is in reality. And what I have found in my own life is that when I do take things personally, you know, it creates a lot of unnecessary stress. You know, you get on guard, you get defensive, and it kind of interrupts conversations and prevents you from kind of, you know, having the right type of conversation. So I want to dig into, you know, tips onto how not to take things so personally, and then what to do if you find that you are actually taking some things personally as well, too. You know, just for a recap, you know, it's the first of the year. The Unlicensed Counselor, you know, I went to graduate school, completed all the educational program, and then stopped right at my practicum. So I did all the 3.5 years of coursework and then didn't complete the practicum. So I have some counseling knowledge. But really the point of this, the entire podcast is to give practical, bite-sized counseling information. Let's break it down. Let's keep it simple. You know, what you hear here is not necessarily earth-shattering. But oftentimes we just need to be reminded, you know, we need to hear these things. They need to bubble up to kind of our consciousness about, oh, wow, that's a topic that, yeah, you know what? Last week at work, somebody said something or my friend canceled and it kind of made me feel. So I like to take these little topics, bring them to your attention, and then present them in really a kind of a digestible way. You know, solution-focused counseling is what I always talk about here at the Unlicensed Counselor because in my opinion, you sit down with counselors and all of a sudden everything has to be attached to trauma and dramatic events and you're going back to childhood. And sometimes that's an appropriate way to do things. Other times you just need straightforward kind of suggestion on how to address issues, right? And that's what I'd like to think I'm here to do as the Unlicensed Counselor as well, too. So, okay, we got that all out of the way here. So before we get started, I want to thank our friends over at ShareTech. Again, if you've heard me, ShareTech is the leading at-home drug and alcohol screen available to you anywhere across the country. That's ShareTek. Go and purchase the ShareTech test. It provides a lab-based report sent discreetly to you and securely so that you can identify the most number of drugs tested out of any test that's available on the market, and it will provide the levels of those, all with a patented process so that it's not that the test can't be attempted to be cheated. It's that we will flag it on that report and tell you if there has been any manipulation on that test. So a really valuable feature in drug and alcohol screening, because someone's able to continue to use because they're cheating a test like you can on these onesie, twosie, Amazon, Walmart, kind of at-home tests, pee in a cup type of thing, which are easily cheatable. Then you're going to really have a problem if that person's continuing to use or using a drug that's not being tested for, which is a very common practice as well, too. So Google ShareTech, find one of those, pick up one of those tests if you need it at home. It's used by some of the leading treatment centers and outpatient programs in the country. Next up on the list, I want to thank our friends and my other organization, the StopStartsHere.org. Our campaign is Hard Stop. We are a youth drug prevention organization. This is something I am very passionate about. The messaging that we're doing is raw, bold, edgy, compelling, social media-based prevention messaging targeted to youth and parents. And it is probably the most important thing that I'm going to be doing in my life. Just, right now, and I think I've said this before, 7 out of 10 pills are counterfeit, right? So if you're getting a pill from somewhere that's black market, 7 out of 10 of these pills are counterfeit. That means they're cut with something that you think it's a Vicodin? No, it's not. You think it's a Xanax? No, it's not, right? And that's a really deadly and scary thing. So we are out here with our messaging. We want to make sure that we kind of saturate the social media world with our youth drug prevention messaging. Again, go to the StopStartsHere.org. And thanks for your support. We're picking up a lot of followers and watching our videos and content. Really appreciate that. And last but not least, for the unlicensed counselor, if you like what you hear, send this episode to a friend, share it, like it, follow me on social media. I'm always down to have a discussion or kind of kick around some of the topics. I don't say that, you have to go by all of my principles, but I really like to have a conversation. I just think when we're talking, we're engaging, we can kind of get to some fun stuff here and cover maybe things that we didn't bring up on the podcast. So, all right, now back to the topic du jour, how to not take things so personally. Look, I've been in relationships, I have family, all of these things, you have friends. They do things, and a lot of times my initial gut reaction, especially I think when I was drinking and using drugs as well too, is kind of there's that sensitivity. It's that thin skin where it's like somebody would do something or say something or cancel on me or not get back to me, and all of a sudden, that guard goes up, and it's like I noticed myself, and I noticed this more in retrospect than I did really in the moment when I'm kind of looking back and going, yeah, I think I did take a lot of these things personally and really didn't mean to, and still do from time to time. But I'm much better equipped nowadays to notice when I do take things personally, and I can kind of step back in that situation, and I'm shrinking the time that it takes to identify that I'm taking something personally as well too. Whereas maybe I would have never known it before. Now maybe I'll take something personal, but I can kind of within the confines of the conversation go, I think I'm overreacting here. I think I'm taking it a little bit personal, or maybe I need to think about it from their perspective. So let's dig into it right now. The number one thing I had on how to not take things so personally is recognize that it's not about you, right? It's pretty straightforward stuff. So, we want to make sure we understand the importance of people's actions, their words, and they're a reflection of their own feelings, their insecurities, their experiences, rather than a judgment, right, of my worth, of your worth. Right? So here's an example. I'm going to try and provide an example for each one of these two. Your friend cancels plans with you at the last minute. Instead of feeling hurt and thinking that they don't value your friendship, you remind yourself that you have a hectic schedule or other commitments that led to the cancellation, right? That they may have had a hectic schedule or other commitments that led to the cancellation, right? So it's not necessarily about you, right? These are other people. We don't know what's going on in their lives, right? It's real easy to see other people's things in social media or what they have or material things that they may have. You just don't know, right? So let's make sure that we recognize that it's not necessarily about you, right? They have other stuff going on in their life, and that you don't need to take that last-minute cancellation so personally, right? Number 2 on the list. This is one that I have been working on quite a bit. Practice empathy, right? So practicing empathy involves putting yourself in the other person's shoes and trying to understand their perspective and motivations, helping you see that their actions may not be directed at you personally, right? So practicing empathy as these things are coming up. So somebody said something. Here's an example, right? A coworker appears irritated during a meeting. Rather than assuming they are upset with you, you consider that they might be going through a tough time or facing work-related challenges, right? Empathy, understanding, thinking about it from somebody else's point of view, right? These are simple little ways that we can hopefully redirect that initial feeling. And I think it's important to kind of recognize that initial feeling, especially if this is something you've been doing for years or decades, right? And your initial reaction is that guard kind of goes up, or you kind of feel it right away. Let's see if we can just pause and see if you can insert just a little space in between kind of your next reaction, and see if you can throw in one of these things too and be like, oh, okay, maybe I just need to practice some empathy. Maybe they're canceling or doing that because it's something that's going on in their own world. It has nothing to do with you. So kind of separating yourself from this, right? Which leads me to point number 3. Separate fact from the interpretation. So this point encourages you to distinguish between the facts of a situation and your interpretation of those facts. So helping you avoid jumping to conclusions or making assumptions about others' intentions. Example, your partner arrives home late without notifying you. Instead of assuming they're neglecting you, you recognize that traffic delays could be the reason for their lateness, right? So I'm separating the fact from the interpretation, right? And being able to, again, pause, have that kind of sit in your brain for a minute and understand that there may be other things at play here instead of they said they were going to be home at this time. They're not here at this time. They're always doing this time. And then you get into that little spiral thing, right? That little spiral thing. And as you start to kind of not take things so personally as well, too, we need to kind of, in my opinion, let some of the other stuff go from the past as well, too, because maybe you're now coming to that understanding and you don't want to go backwards and reach, well, you always do this and you always do that and you always... We got to be able to let some of that go and kind of change our thinking and change those patterns and start to kind of think about these situations a little bit differently. And look, if somebody's late, it irritates me all the time, and it kind of ticks me off, especially when you've had conversations with persons about, hey, can we be a little bit more respectful of my time? But then I'll get spun up sometimes, and I'm like, they'll tell me a reason, and it's a legitimate reason while they're late. And it's like, oh, okay, so I just, potentially almost ruined dinner plans because I was getting ready to get worked up because you were late again or something like that, when really there's legitimate reasons that can and do happen. Number 4, you've heard me talk about this on numerous episodes of the podcast as well. And I think it's one of these principles that applies a lot in kind of the counseling behavioral health world. Avoid mind reading, right? Mind reading involves not assuming that you know someone else's thinking or feelings. Let's make sure that we're asking for clarification or engage in open communication to understand their viewpoint, right? So here's an example. A friend seems distant lately. Instead of assuming they're upset with you, you ask them directly how they're feeling and if something's bothering you. How simple does that seem when I sit here and read it out loud, right? But I know many of us, myself included, you get that little hamster wheel going in our brain and you think of every reason why, could be, should be, maybe, instead of just, hey, is everything all right? How's it going? Is something going on? Can we need to talk about it? Instead of sitting here just guessing what they're thinking. And we always, I'll say me. I always insert the worst thing into that in my brain as well too, what they're thinking. And the reality is it's usually the exact opposite. There's a legitimate thing that's kind of going on that it just happens. And I'm sitting here mind reading, or I expect them to know how I feel and things like that. Or when you say that, don't you know that makes me feel like, whatever that is. And come on, let's stop that. Let's stop trying to do, the mind reading thing, right? Let's just have clear, open communication. And I think that's dramatically going to reshape some of your conversations. And again, make sure we find a little space in between that initial reaction where the guard goes up and you're ready to kind of, tense the shoulders up and take things personally. Take a pause, think about it, maybe take a breath, practice. Like I always say, you got to practice these things. And then see if you can use one of these ways to kind of not take things so personally when you've maybe traditionally would have done that. Number 5 on the list, build some self-confidence, right? So building self-confidence is crucial because when you believe in yourself, you're less likely to be affected by others' opinions and criticisms. Pretty straightforward stuff, right? Example, if you receive negative feedback at work, instead of doubting your abilities, you remind yourself of your past achievements and the skills you bring to the job, right? If you know your self-worth, your value, right? If you understand those things and who you are, or you need to build up and work on that a little bit more, you're not just going to take things so personally, right? That just kind of get fired off to you. And I think that's probably why they call it having thin skin a lot of the time as well too, right? That's a term that gets used when kind of talking about this very often. Number 6, focus on your reaction, right? So this point highlights the importance of paying attention to how you react to situations. So understanding why you react in certain ways based on past experiences or insecurities can help you change this pattern. Example, when someone makes a sarcastic comment and it triggers feelings of insecurity, you may take a moment to reflect on why this comment affected you and explore whether it relates to your past experiences. Now, I think this is a great one, but I think this one requires a little bit more of a deeper dive. And I don't think this specific example on how, what we're talking about, I think this one needs to happen maybe at night. Maybe you're reflecting back on the conversation. I'd love, in an ideal world, for you to be able to kind of reflect like this in real time. I mean, I don't know if I could, and I'm pretty well self-aware of these things and actively try and improve myself in these areas. But, I think I will do better at kind of understanding why a comment hurt me, what it triggered. I don't like the word triggered, but if it sets me off or makes me feel this way, let's maybe rethink that conversation at night. Again, they were late and didn't call or text and tell you. It's like, well, why does that make you so angry? Well, maybe it's because they've done it, 200 times on you, right? Okay, but, she was on a work call, had to pick up the kids from school, and had to do all these other things. Like, understand that there could be something. Why did your reaction immediately go to anger, right? So right now I'm just kind of talking what I would be saying in my head out loud at the end of the night if I'm replaying that conversation. Okay. It's like looking at the game film, right? I mean, how do you improve? How does a sports team improve? They go back and they watch tape. So I can go back, or we could all go look back in our brain in a conversation that maybe, got you ticked off or frustrated you. And let's replay that tape in our mind and be like, okay, I can see where that's happening in real time. Why did I get angry? Why did I shut down? Why didn't I ask a clarifying question? Okay, next time that happens, or she says that to me, or he says that to me, maybe I can do this, or pause for a moment, or whatever the strategy is. Use one of these and hopefully improve on the next time around. You're not going to nail this. I mean, these are skills that, like any of these things, take practice to be implemented. So just go easy on yourself. But I really like the focusing on your reaction, but maybe process that at nighttime. Replay that game film in your mind. All right? Okay. So that was a little bit on how to not take things so personally. Now, look, I know it's still going to happen. It's still going to happen to me. It's still going to happen to you. So, what do you do if you are still taking things personally, right? That's kind of the how. This is like, all right, well, what are we doing about this then? Number 1, like I've been saying, pause and reflect, right? If you find yourself taking something personally, take a step back. Reflect on why you're feeling this way and what kind of triggered that reaction, right? Let's just pause, reflect. And again, try and do this, if it starts over the course of a day, great. And then just try and kind of bring that time frame closer to when you're actually being triggered or set off by a comment, by a person. And maybe you find, by the way, that it's a certain individual as well, too. Maybe it's a communication style that's just not working for you, or the look or the stare or the glare or something like that. Think about all these things and as to why you're taking it so personally. But let's start by number 1, pausing, and let's reflecting. Kind of what I was just talking about before, too. Number 2 thing to do, what to do if you're taking things personally. Challenge those negative thoughts. I think this is a really important one, right? So challenge any negative or self-critical thoughts that arise when you take something personally. Ask yourself if there's evidence to support your interpretation. So why am I thinking this way? Why does my brain immediately go to that negative place, right? Challenge that and go, is that really what they mean? Are they really trying to put me down or frustrate me here, or something else going on? Or am I irritated at work, or at something going on in my own life, or I'm just unhappy in general, right? Challenge why you're immediately going to that place, right? Again, your friend cancels plans on you and they think that you go, they don't want to spend time with me? I'm not good enough? There's probably another reason for it that's much more realistic, right? So let's be open and honest, and let's think about this a little bit more. So number 3, let's seek some feedback, right? Let's ask for feedback from the person involved to gain a better understanding of their perspective. Open and honest communication can clear up misunderstandings. It's that simple. Well, Steve, is it really? Yes, it is. Be open about this. Let's ask a couple clarifying questions, and I think that you're going to find you're going to be able to hopefully understand where they're coming from when they make a comment like that, and it helps you not take things so personally. Again, not earth-shattering stuff. I'm just trying to raise your awareness to it. And again, if you think that you don't take things so personally, maybe just watch for it coming up, because I bet most of us do, and sometimes you may not even be aware of it, right? So number 4 on the list, practice some self-compassion, right? So treating yourself with kindness and understanding is crucial. Remind yourself that everyone makes mistakes, and it's okay to have some emotional reactions from time to time, right? So go a little bit easier on yourself as you're going through these things. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe they did. Maybe they were upset, or they said things with a little tone or attitude or something that you could realistically take personally. But let's give a little grace. Let's treat yourself with some compassion here and understand that maybe where they're at is where they're at, and I don't need to take that step. So it's just a little more self-awareness, really, kind of who you are as well, too. Number 5, learn from experience, right? So use moments when you take things personally as opportunities for personal growth and self-improvement, right? Consider how you can change your behavior or thought patterns in the future. I love that. I love trying to challenge my thought patterns. I love trying to change those things. So again, if you find yourself in one of those moments, even if you quote unquote fail and you do take something personally in the moment, let's think about that later on in the day, right? Let's go back, replay that game tape, and consider how maybe if that conversation comes up, what could we do a little bit differently next time? How could I change? What could I have said? How could I have responded differently? Maybe I just need to respond slower. Let's think of ways that we could kind of use that experience and maybe change it for the next time around, right? It's unreasonable to think that you're just going to nail this every time somebody comes at you. It's going to happen. So how can we just improve, right? So learn from the experience. Number 6, let's always consider professional help. If this is something that you really struggle with and it's impacting your life, and honestly, it really can. If you're walking around taking every little comment and thing, personal, you're probably tough to be around, truthfully. And you may actually need to get some professional help, right? If it's affecting your well-being, your relationships, go find a counselor, a therapist, sit down with somebody and find out, why this is. Maybe there is something that's really going on there as well, too, that's a little bit deeper. I honestly was borderline that way for a long time. And it affected my relationships with my parents, with my ex-wife, stepkids, all that type of stuff. They'd say things and I'd take it one way, and that's just not what they meant, right? And when I was drinking and using, I understood, oh, okay, I was just a little more hypersensitive to everything at the time. I didn't have my full wits about me, right? And so when somebody would say something, and I also wasn't, mentally kind of fit, somebody would say and I would react, right? They say and I'd react. And that was just that pattern that I was trapped in for years and years and years. And now, clear-headed, mentally, spiritually, physically fit, all those things kind of firing all cylinders, I still get it, but I'm much more aware of it, and I'm able to kind of pause in the moment much better now, ask a clarifying question, challenge some of these beliefs, practice a little empathy, and just go, I can see where I could get worked up about that, but I don't think that that's really what they're saying there. But it takes a lot of practice to kind of warm yourself up to kind of going, I mean, they're my friend. They're not going to be putting me down, or they're my parents. Why would they have that view or opinion on me and things like that? So, a lot of different ideas. I just wanted to kind of put out there for you to start to challenge the way that you think around, just not taking things so personally. It seems like an easy topic. A lot of us say that, nothing bothers me, water off my back, shrug it off, all that kind of stuff. But the reality is it can really make for difficult relationships, challenging situations, and it could just kind of impact your life negatively if you're walking around constantly, taking things personally, getting offended, all of that type of stuff. So, if some of this resonated with you, or maybe there's a person in your life that you feel like maybe this could be a dialogue starter, shoot them over this podcast. Maybe it'll open up a discussion. There's a lot more information if you're out there on the web and want to find it, but I think it's an important topic just because I think all of us do it, even if we don't all admit it, right? So give this podcast a listen. It's 20 minutes. Maybe you can spend a little time with your friend, kind of kicking around some of these, or your wife, and be like, hey, maybe we can evaluate how we're communicating, because I have found that when you say this, it kind of puts me into this mode, and maybe we can improve on it, right? So like I said, the Unlicensed Counselor is just kind of taking these topics and giving you solution-focused, kind of bite-sized ideas so you can chew on this and discuss, and kind of bringing it to your awareness. So, fun little episode. Wanted to throw that out there. Hope you enjoyed it. If you like it, send it to a friend, share, like, download, all that good stuff. Helps the podcast continue to grow. My name is Steve Moak. I am the Unlicensed Counselor. Till next time, thank you very much.